Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 7 questions Brits always ask me about America and its people. Basically just the same video that I reacted to before a few days ago, but the other way around. Instead of Americans asking questions about Brits, it's this one. And yeah, I mean that one had questions about warm beer, about how Brits have warm beer, which isn't true. I think someone commented basically saying the beer's darker. So maybe that's a misconception of it being warmer and darker. I can't actually remember other ones to be honest, but I did do the reaction like 3-4 days ago. But we're going to check this out. Hopefully going to enjoy. Hopefully you're all doing well. And let's check out this video.
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest.
Ow, he's loud. Why is he so loud?
To uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to questions. Specifically, questions that British people ask me about the United States and its people.
I'm Lawrence Brown and this video is sponsored by Squarespace.
If you've been paying attention, you may remember that last week I did the exact reverse of this video when I looked at 7 questions that Americans always ask me about Britain and its people. And as somebody who's lived in the United States now for ages, I do indeed get a lot of questions from people back home, such as, "Ooh, Lawrence, do you think you'll ever develop an American accent?" Or, "Why is Arkansas pronounced Arkansas, not Arkansas?" I did a YouTube short about it already. And so I'm drawing on all of my expertise of living in the United States to answer questions like these today, so that maybe all of the British friends and family members that are asking these questions finally shut the up. That said, I really like people, and since we're on our way to 1 million subscribers, if you're not yet one of them, do that now.
700.
In the meantime, here are...
Bro, he's approaching that, man. Flipping hell.
7 of the most common questions that I get asked by British people about America and Americans. Number 1, why do Americans call their...
I've learnt this probably like 5 years ago. Oh, my coat's falling. Is it falling? Come on. Yeah, my coat just fell. I don't know if you heard that. Association football, I've learnt this a long time ago now, but I still feel like there's a lot of people that still don't know this and get offended. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think people care that much, but maybe there's a select few people who genuinely get pissed off when they hear the word soccer, which I don't understand why you'd care that much. Come on now.
Sport football when they don't use their feet. Well, firstly, that's not entirely true. I mean, I think we've all seen it where a player takes the ball, puts it down, kicks it in slow motion.
I am fascinated as to how this was named football though. Like the history of the name of this sport. I wonder how that is.
That might just be in the movies. And everybody goes crazy, so it must be an important part of the sport. But secondly, I did some Googling and I found out that it's called football because of the sports from which it's derived. See, back in the 19th century, Britain was developing a series of ball games. One of them, famously, was soccer, or to give it its full name, association football.
Rugby.
And this was called association football because they had to differentiate it from something else called rugby football. Rugby football did indeed go by the name of rugby football, and in fact sometimes does to this day, despite the fact that they too don't use their feet unless they're kicking it over a giant H or down the field or maybe some other ways. And American style football basically took its cues from rugby football and the name stuck. Alright, this question I get a lot. Why?
Oh, isn't it? Actually, no, Subway. Subway has to be considered a cake in, I can't remember what country, but because there's so much sugar in it, it's considered like a cake or something. But American bread being so sweet, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I haven't really assumed that. But I've also not tried it, so.
Why is American bread so sweet? And we have to make a bit of a distinction here, because the bread that we're talking about is the kind of store-bought bread that you get in supermarkets that are used for sandwiches. And it's true, one of my earliest experiences in this country was raiding my mother-in-law's bread bin when I was hungry late at night. And I was really excited because, as everybody knows, there's nothing better than bread and butter at midnight. That's just me, right? But it was really sweet. It was almost like I was having a late night dessert. And basically, this additional sweetness on American bread comes down to one word: added sugar. That's 2 words. And it's true. As somebody who gave up added sugar a couple of years ago, I was shocked to find just how much added sugar was found in American bread. 2 grams of added sugar, which is 4%. 3 grams of added sugar, 6%. Now, there's a couple of things to add here beyond sugar. Number 1, the addition of added sugar is supposedly
3 grams of added sugar. I've just really deep how much that really is.
Intentional in order to prolong the life of the bread. And pound for pound, I have found that American bread takes a bit longer to turn green. I was a student in England, so I've got a lot of experience in this field. But the other thing to point out is not all American bread is sweet. Since giving up added sugar, I've mostly turned to sourdough or rye, some of which have 0 added sugar, which tastes great with some strawberry jam, which I've just realised has added sugar. And something else that's really sweet.
Just get some homemade jam. But yeah, I use sourdough a lot as well. It's good as well. I mean, I actually prefer it to normal bread. Yeah, but here we go. He's getting his ad in here, getting that money.
You can try Squarespace for free for 14 days.
Get your free trial at squarespace.com today, and once your website is ready for liftoff, go to squarespace.com/lostinthepond and you'll save 10% on your first website or domain purchase. The link is in my description below.
Number 3,
are you scared of all the guns?
And I would say not all of them. I used to love the Super Soaker 5000. And in fact, it's a weird one, this, because while guns are definitely used to kill more people in America than they are in Britain, I don't particularly live in fear of them because, number 1, I'm an optimist. Some would say a blind optimist. And number 2, so long as you stay in the right part of town and or don't become a member of a gang, there's a good chance that you can go 16 years living in America without seeing gun violence firsthand. Now, that's not to say, of course, that America hasn't had many well-documented mass shooting events. And these, of course, horrific as they are, paint a picture that there are shootings on every corner of every city at every second of every day. I don't want you to come here with that false impression, because otherwise you won't ever leave your hotel. And I can hear my Uncle Toby right now, but Lawrence, there are 30,000 gun-related deaths in America every year. And that is a big number, but you have to keep in mind that, unfortunately, over half of those are suicides. But even though this is a very serious subject, I wanted to answer it, because while there clearly are people in this country who will pick up a gun and do the unthinkable, your chances of dying in this way during a given year, never mind a 2-week visit, are approximately 1 in 32,000. So don't worry too much and just be vigilant. Okay, can we get back to the comedy stuff now?
Do Americans think you know the Queen?
Thanks. The next question. Oh, get this all the time. Do Americans think you know the Queen? No, because she's dead. But also, despite this being a kind of stereotype of Americans, I've received this question, or a question along these lines, precisely once. I was in a training class back when I worked in a call centre, and in those call centre training classes, you get a big mishmash of many different types of people. And I was put with this one fellow who was weirdly obsessed with my accent, who kept bombarding me with questions, one of which was, why do you call soccer football? Happens in reverse.
What?
And his question was something along the lines of, did you used to live near the Queen? And even though I don't think he meant it in this way, I suppose relatively speaking I did, because I lived in London. She lived in London. We were like buddies. But I got the sense that he meant, did you live in the same apartment complex? And the thought of the Queen paying rent is quite laughable because she's dead. Why is it called the World Series when only Americans play?
Oh, he's talking about sports. Oh, okay. I find these conversations very fascinating. Is this like about, what is this World Series? I guess like world champions, like the NBA Finals was recently, and the Celtics are the world champions. That's how they label it, even though it's like a national league. I get the arguments on both sides, right? Like, he's going to go into it. You've got the best teams in the best league, so they are the best team. But to claim them as the world champions from the best league, I just guess that rubs people the wrong way. Let's see. I'm fascinated by what he has to say. I think he's going to defend the sort of title, because I feel like he's lived there for so long, he's ingrained in the culture and the sports, and he's probably going to view it in a way of like, sort of somewhat agreeing with the US system, or the US naming system for their sports teams.
And once again, that is completely and utterly a little bit false, because it's not just American teams. There's a Canadian one as well.
True.
Secondly, I need to dispel a myth.
He's talking about World Series. He's talking about baseball here.
This time it was believed that the baseball competition's name came from the fact that they were sponsored by the New York World Telegram newspaper. The assertion being that they took the word world, try saying that after 4 whiskeys, and named it that with utterly no pretension of being a global competition. But that theory has since been debunked. Instead, the real origin of the name is this. In 1903, the owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates challenged his counterpart at the Boston Boston Red Sox to what he dubbed a World Championship Series, because at the time the Pirates were the best team in the National League and the Red Sox were the best team in the American League. And why the National League and the American League don't mean the same thing, I'll never know. But it seems like he used it ironically and it sort of just stuck and then evolved into the World Series. There is, of course, a baseball competition that does include different countries, and that is the World Baseball Classic, which is sort of like a dime store version of the FIFA World Cup, but with baseball.
I've never seen that before. How many teams, or how many countries compete? I wonder if Britain or the UK have ever competed in that before.
Why do American tourists in Britain tell you the state they're from before they name their country?
That is very true. I've noticed that, like in comment sections and stuff, when people say where they're from, or maybe like when I've been sent letters before. I get it now because I've done these reactions for a long time, but I always wondered it.
And I too have experience with this, because when I met my American wife over in England, my first words to her were, "Hi, I'm Lawrence. I was named after the actor Laurence Olivier. Isn't that impressive?" But my second words to her were, "Where are you from?" To which she answered, "Indiana." And I've never asked her about that. Maybe she said Indiana because I assumed from her accent that she was from the United States, but actually when I asked her it, I remember thinking, well, you could be Canadian. I could end up looking like a right numpty if I assume your Americanness. But equally, for those of us who have a bit of geographical nous, I know from the answer Indiana that she is from the United States. The problem is, not everybody in Britain knows all of the 50 states. Not everybody in America does, come to that. So I suppose in some ways it is kind of weird, but then on the other hand, I think Americans do carry a little bit of pride in their roots, as in where they came from, not their hair, although in my wife's case, both. And so maybe it's a manifestation of that. It's sort of like when Americans go around wearing their college jumpers / sweaters, because I think it might be to Americans a status symbol. I've no idea actually why they do that. Sorry, I've just made most of that up. Let me know in the comments why you do it, if you do. Actually, there's a decent chance that you don't, because of this.
Oh, here we go.
Why don't many Americans own passports? Well, as I said in a video that I did all about this a few years ago, the answer is multifaceted. Firstly, while only 42% of Americans own a passport compared to 86% of Brits, significantly more Americans...
86% of Brits? My family's bringing that down then, because my dad doesn't have one, my mum doesn't have one, one of my brothers doesn't have one. I only got one 2 years ago, so my family's not on that, in that level. And we live in the UK where it's all the same. In the US, obviously, there's so many different terrains and I guess just every state is different. Like you go Florida or whatever, you go Alaska, Hawaii. Obviously, these are still quite far. California, New York, like it's all different types of places, like you're in different countries.
Americans these days do own a passport than they did 30 years ago, which was approximately when I first started hearing about this stereotype. And secondly, there's this perception that America is so huge and packed with variety that you could just do all of your traveling here. And while that isn't necessarily an idea that I subscribe to, it is one that many Americans do. And because arguably way more Americans than Brits have family members and friends that live 1,000 miles away in the same country, sometimes in order to see them, that necessitates that they take a holiday within the country. But it's not cheap. You know, domestic flights can get up to $1,000. And so that would be one of the other reasons that a lot of Americans don't travel internationally, is they simply can't afford it. And I know...
What, within the country it's over £1,000? I get that long flights are expensive, but that is mental.
What you're thinking, yeah, Lawrence, but isn't it also down to a lack of curiosity on the part of Americans? And I think it would be hard to argue that there isn't an element of that, but that just comes down to what they're exposed to. If you compare the news cycles of both Britain and America, the BBC reports on countries from all over the world, even countries that don't have oil. How mad is that? Whereas when America provides international reports, it's usually on countries that they have a vested interest in due to their foreign policy. So I think America just isn't exposed to other countries as much, and this is heightened of course by the fact that they are bordered only by Mexico and Canada. If you go over to Britain, we're bordered by the sea, but then the rest of Europe with all of the countries that come with that. Now, that's not to say that no Americans travel abroad, otherwise I wouldn't have met my wife and or moved to the United States and started this very channel. So I'm glad she did.
Final words.
Well, if I've learned anything today, it's that on YouTube you can talk about guns and bread in the same video. But I've also learned that I didn't share housing facilities with the Queen. Let me know in the comments what you've...
There we go. When Brits say American bread tastes like cake, it's an insult to American bread. But let's be honest, it's also an insult to a British cake. Fair enough. You got us there. As to the size of America, Bill Bryson put it in a good sense of scale by saying that we have farms the size of Belgium. Fucking hell. I mean, Belgium is a very small country, but so is the Netherlands. So is England. I mean, I can't talk. There was no passport. Time was no passport was required to travel into Mexico or Canada by land. That has since changed. What? Time was no passport? I guess before that you didn't need a passport or something. When we were over there last, we would say we're from Oregon in the States because we expected, if we just said America, the next question would be what part? Fair, just cut to the point. Makes sense. We say the state where we're from because we are asked that very question amongst our fellow Americans. Yeah, that's fair enough. Makes sense. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. And yeah, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with this stuff? Do you disagree? Yeah, let me know in the comments. But until next time, subscribe and peace.